What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is part of a series where I focus on Academy Award Best Picture nominees from a certain year. Done such years in the past such as 2000 all the way to 2014, and you guys guessed it because you clicked on this video. This time around, I'm focusing on the Academy Award Best Picture nominees from the year 2015 and ranking them from worst to best. Now, as of 2009 to now 2015, the Academy decided to change it from having merely 5 Best Picture nominees to then having it be up to 10. And I say up to 10 because they had it where 2009 and I believe it was 2010. They were like, yeah, we'll give 10 Best Picture nominees. But then after that, it was like, you know what? We're going to have it be only 8 or maybe 9. And in the case of 2015, there was only 8 Best Picture nominees. And the reason for this is simple. It's because of preferential voting that they switched it to, which later on they would decide that they were going to have preferential voting, but then they were going to have it actually be 10. We'll get to that later on in this series. But for now, guys, the year 2015, there was, again, 8 Academy Award Best Picture nominees, and I'll be ranking them from 8 being the worst to 1 being the best. And of course, my humble opinion, and I look forward to hearing your guys' ranking down below. But guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So kicking things off, my number 8 is Room. I like Room. I think it's good. I think Brie Larson does a great job. Jacob Tremblay is also great. The two of them, their chemistry is really something. It's a good film, but it's really something that, to be honest with you, it's been, 8 years? I haven't had the urge to revisit this film. I haven't. Now, again, I know what some of you are thinking. Rewatchability value doesn't necessarily mean a film's not good, and I agree with that. I'm not saying the film's not good. It is a good film. But I think that it might just be a one-and-done film for me. I mean, maybe at some point I'll have the urge to revisit it, but I really haven't had the urge to revisit it. I think it's good, but I do remember the third act, it kind of falling apart a bit. But that being said, the first 2/3 are really quite strong, and again, it's very well acted. I can see why some people might have this very high up on their list. I can definitely respect that. But for me, it's got the number 8 slot. Next up, that was my number 8. Next up, my number 7 is from 7 onwards. I own all of these on Blu-ray to 4K. My number 7 is The Martian. This is a very, very entertaining film. I saw this in theaters, similar to Room, and I really liked it. I think that it is a very well put together film. It is a fine example of a blockbuster done right. Matt Damon's really good in the film. I think that he is both comedic but also dramatic when need be. The visual effects are outstanding. I love the cinematography. I love the score. There's just a lot of things I love about this film. It is one of those films that if someone's like, hey, you want to watch it? I'll put it in. I'll put it in the 4K player because I really find myself to be drawn to this film more and more. It's a Ridley Scott film. And y'all probably know it already, but I'm a big fan of Ridley Scott. I definitely think that this is one of his best. But yeah, that's my number 7. Next up, my number 6 is Bridge of Spies. So Bridge of Spies, it's funny. Bridge of Spies is one of those films that I saw in theaters, and I really liked it. And I bought it on Blu-ray, as you can see, several months after, it was in theaters. And I watched it again, and I really liked it. But it's one of those films I just decided not to revisit. It wasn't like anything against the film. It was just one of those films that I just didn't really have the urge to revisit. But then I rewatched it last year, and I gotta say, I loved it even more. I didn't think it was possible, but I loved Bridge of Spies even more. It is more relevant today than ever. It's a film that's aged really well. It's Steven Spielberg at his best. It's got a lot of his sensibilities that work. Thomas Newman does the score, which is odd considering that John Williams usually does the score, but Thomas Newman's score in this is quite good. The cinematography is outstanding, the production design, the acting. Mark Rylance does a great job in it. I do think that the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor went to the wrong mark. More on that later on in this video, but I still think Bridge of Spies, it's exceptional. If you haven't seen it already, I would highly urge you to revisit it, or watch it for the first time, I should say, because it is a film that holds up quite well, and it's a great film. Also, very historically accurate, if you look it up. But yeah, that is my number 6. Next up, my number 5 is The Big Short. Funny how things can change. So The Big Short is a film I saw in theaters. I liked it, but I didn't love it. And honestly, I didn't think it deserved a Best Picture nomination. That being said, and it was actually in last place. Like if I had done this ranking, I would say 3 years ago, it would have been in last place. That being said, over the last couple years, I had the urge to revisit it. And so I decided to buy it on Blu-ray I got it $5. Best $5 I've ever spent, because upon revisiting it, I actually loved The Big Short. I think that is a film that's really, really well done. I mean, holy cow. It went from like a 4 out of 5 for me to like a 4.5 out of 5. And This is a film that just seems to get better. I'm already looking forward to revisiting it a third time. If you haven't done so already, I would highly urge you to watch this film. It's really good. It is Adam McKay at his best. And yeah, that is why it is my number 5. Next up, at number 4, we have The Revenant. This film is glorious. It is over 2.5 hours, but I gotta say, it never feels its length. I was consistently engaged by this film, not only when I saw it in theaters, but subsequential viewings. I just find myself always fascinated by this film. It is a visual feast for the eyes. It's got great performances from Tom Hardy, Leonardo DiCaprio. It is both an action film, a survival film, a thriller, an art house film. It has it all, and it works. It was a huge success at the box office. I don't know if it would be today, but I am very glad that it was at the time, and it is a film that I feel like has a lot of rewatchability value, and it is a great film. I would highly recommend you check it out if you haven't done so already, and that is why it's my number 4. Next up, my number 3. This is a film I saw twice in theaters, and my number 3 is Brooklyn. Saw it twice in theaters, and I've seen it several times since then on Blu-ray. I love this film. I think it is one of the best romances of the 2010s. It is a film that, simple, yes, but deceptively so, because it piles on layers with each act. And I think that by the end, you feel very conflicted, just like the lead character. And I think that that's something that is quite strong directing. It's a really good screenplay, too. And I think that Saoirse Ronan does an amazing job in the lead role. Definitely deserving of that Oscar nomination. Honestly, I would have probably given her the Oscar for Best Actress over Brie Larson, but that's just me personally. I think she is great in this film. This is a film that is, I'm not going to say underrated, because I mean, it's a Academy Award Best Picture nominee, but I do think it's kind of underseen these days, which is a shame, because it is one of the better romances to come out in some time. But yeah, that is my number 3. Next up, my number 2. We're talking about best of. Brooklyn's one of the best romances of the 2010s. Well, guess what? My number 2 is Mad Max Fury Road, which is one of the best action films ever. This is an incredible film. I saw it 4 times in theaters, and I've seen it maybe a dozen times since. I love this film. I think that it is an outstanding feat for filmmaking. This is what people should watch when they're making action films, and say, you know what, we got to make it like this. We got to make it feel as though the characters are actually in danger. We got to actually have it where the pacing is both fast-paced, but also where the action is very cleanly staged. You can tell what's going on, but also knowing how to use CGI, not as like the main force and the main interest, but have it be mostly for background shots. So that way all the the shots in the foreground, those are the shots that we focus on, and have it where those are the shots that are actually in camera. There's a lot of in-camera shots in this film, and it shows. It's a great looking film. It's outstanding. It is combining blockbuster sensibilities with art house sensibilities in the best of ways. Mad Max Fury Road, masterpiece. It's my number 2. Next up, my number 1. It is the one that won Best Picture for this year. Very well deservingly so. My number 1 is Spotlight. So Spotlight is a masterpiece. I was very blown away that it won Best Picture, not going to lie. Bit of backstory. I thought The Revenant was going to win Best Picture. I did, because Spotlight, prior to Spotlight winning, it had been a long, long time since a Best Picture winner had only won like one other Oscar that didn't include Best Picture. So this only won 2. So prior to that, I think it was The Greatest Show on Earth was the last one. So that was over 60 years ago, 60 years prior to this film. So I was blown away that it won Best Picture, but I'm very glad that it did, because I feel like when this won Best Picture, more people saw it. And rightfully so. It's a film that's very hard-hitting. It's very dialogue-driven, but at the same time, despite it being so dialogue-driven, it's always directed in a way that's very engaging. I felt like I was in the point of view of all these characters, and I got to know them, not necessarily in these exposition-heavy scenes, but I got to know them through how they went about the journalist integrity and how they focused on, going about the information. It's a film that's very well acted. Full circle, I mentioned Mark Rylance and how I think that it went to the wrong, Best Supporting Actor went to the wrong mark. I think that Mark Ruffalo should have won Best Supporting Actor. I think his performance here was amazing. Michael Keaton's also incredible in the film. Rachel McAdams. There's not a single bad performance in this film. It is a film that overall, I think it's masterful. 8 years ago, I found it to be a masterpiece, and each subsequent year, I just find myself loving it more and more. It's in my top 25 films of all time. What can I say? I love it. I think it's a great, great film. If you haven't done so already, we highly urge you to check it out.
But yeah, Spotlight's my number one.
But guys, let me know your ranking of the 2015 Best Picture nominees down below. Very curious to hear your guys' thoughts. And if you haven't done so already, don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me down on Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.